I once knew 3 French frogs called Henri, Frou-Frou, and Mirabelle. Henri was a student, always studying with his nose in a book. Mirabelle was a fine cook, and Frou-Frou was a singer. She sang pop songs in a cafe. Henri and his 2 sisters were alone in the world. This is not strange, because the French like eating the long legs of a frog. They say it is like best chicken. As for me, I prefer to eat best chicken, and I write about frogs. Frogs are my friends. The only way you could tell them apart was that Henri would recline on one elbow. Mirabelle sat sensibly, while Frou-Frou used to stick out her stomach like this. Otherwise, they were all alike as 3 green peas in a pot. The frogs lived in a villa on the bank of the River Lou, in a quiet valley on the French Riviera, quite close to Nice. The house was small and comfortable. The front door was painted green, and so were the shutters on the windows that kept out the strong sunlight. It had a front room, which was cool and dark, a small kitchen, a shower, and 3 small bedrooms upstairs. Henri's room was lined with heavy books, with a neat bed in the corner. Mirabelle's room was very tidy, but Frou-Frou was most untidy. Her chair was piled high with hats and clothes. She blamed it on her artistic temperament. Henri studied, lying on a rug, while Mirabelle brought him cups of strong coffee on the terrace. "Henri is looking tired," said Mirabelle by the stove to Frou-Frou. "Our dear boy studies too hard, and I think we should have a picnic to bring the colour back to his pale green cheeks." "This soup is good," she said, tasting a spoonful, "but Henri needs sea air and exercise." "What a good idea," agreed Frou-Frou, who was happy to entertain or be entertained. "I will pack a hamper. We can row to the sea in our new boat, and picnic on the beach," cried Mirabelle, as she danced round the kitchen for joy, with a soup ladle for a partner. Mirabelle made herself busy in the kitchen, taking out flour, eggs, and sugar. She said, "I will bake some fancy cakes." She added vanilla to her mixture, which she mixed in a large blue china bowl with a wooden spoon. "Please may I lick the dish?" said Frou-Frou, coming in. "Of course, but do not spoil your appetite," warned Mirabelle. Frou-Frou went upstairs to put on her gayest hat and glass beads. "I will be the prettiest frog on the beach," she told the mirror. She sat down, powdering her nose with pale green powder. She polished her nails and painted them dark green. "Queen Frou-Frou," she cried. She was sometimes a vain frog. In the next-door garden, Victor could be seen watering his roses. He grew his own vegetables and was careful of the insects, birds, and animals, who also lived in his garden. He gave a big basket of vegetables to Mirabelle. "Thank you, Victor," she said to the kind old man in his sun helmet. "I will take these tomatoes on our picnic and make sandwiches with the cucumber." "I would come with you, but I have to plant my marrows," said Victor. Madame Panache rode by on her way to the village. On the front of her old bicycle was a basket, in which rode Riri, her small black poodle. He was a brave dog, for Madame Panache was a bad rider, and would forget to brake until it was too late, and they were already in the hedge, legs in the air and wheels going round like crazy. But Riri, a wise dog, used to jump out first and bark until the local children ran to rescue poor Madame Panache, who shouted at them all to be quiet. She was never lonely, this lively old lady. "Wait for me," cried Henri, running out, waving his purse. "I must get a loaf for our picnic." "Hold tight," cried Madame Panache, as they set off. Henri returned with a long loaf over his shoulder. "Here, Mirabelle, is the fresh loaf. Your cakes smell quite delicious. Could I have one to try?" "Delicious," cried Henry, and he went to get the boat ready. He took some bright cushions to put on the seats and a Turkish rug for their feet. Then he arranged the parasols in the boat in case the sun grew too hot. He pulled the boat out of its shed and tied it to the mooring ring, where it caught the current of the river and pulled hard as though keen to explore downstream. Henri sat down at the back of the boat to wait for his two sisters and read a book. Frou-Frou appeared in her new extravaganza of a hat. It had fruit and flowers and a mockingbird on the top. It was the hat of a star performer. "Do I look all right, Henri?" she asked. "Sit down and we will picnic off your hat," said Henri, turning a page and continuing to read. "Oh, you horrid fellow," cried Frou-Frou, and turned to Mirabel, who was staggering under the weight of an enormous hamper, stuffed full of this and that. "Mirabel, do you like my hat?" "I can't see it, my dear," said poor Mirabel, trying to peer around the hamper. "I'm sure it suits you very well." Henri picked up the oars after helping Mirabel to untie the boat. They were swept along close to the bank, when suddenly a big fish jumped out of the water, knocking Frou-Frou's hat into the air. As she stood up to catch it, she made the boat rock, and Mirabel gave a scream. "Sit down, we will end up in the river," said Henri sternly to Frou-Frou. She was upset and cried, "Did you see that wicked fish? He was after my hat." "He was just frightened by the boat. He will warn the other fish to keep away. It will not happen again." Henri reasonably, "Take off the hat and put it on the floor." "Such a thing," grumbled Frou-Frou, who could be difficult at times. "I can feel the sea breeze, and look, there is the yellow sand and azure blue sea. I shall change in that changing booth into my new bikini, blue with white dots," cried Frou-Frou. When they landed on the sandy beach, she clambered out and went to change, leaving Mirabel and Henri to carry the hamper and set up the umbrella. "Frou-Frou is very lazy," sighed her brother. "Nonsense, Henri," cried Mirabel. "She works very hard at her singing to keep us both." And she shook out the tablecloth firmly to show that she meant what she said. When Frou-Frou returned wearing her yellow beach shoes and new bikini, the feast was ready. Mirabel had 2 bottles of citron on ice, a cool lemon drink. There were plates of sandwiches made with crispy French bread, with ham and tomatoes, cheese and egg, olives, onion, and pink salmon. At one side were plates of small cakes shaped like butterflies, with pink and green icing, and a big box of Turkish delight. "I will get fat," said Frou-Frou, "but I don't care. It's a holiday. I am enjoying myself." She sang a song to them. It went like this: "Hats for sale, hats for sale, hang your hat upon this nail. If it's tall, if it's flat, to get ahead you'll need a hat. Hats are great, hats are small. In a hat you're 9 feet tall. Wear it tipped or wear it straight. Wear a hat when you're en fête." Frou-Frou ate and ate until her tiny bikini was about to go pop. "Frou-Frou is greedy," sighed Henri. "Henri, on one day of the year, Frou-Frou can be as greedy as she likes," cried Mirabel. "Don't spoil her fun. Now I shall play to you on my guitar." She took out her guitar and played a quiet French lullaby. They lay back sleepily among the cushions, content and happy. "What could possibly spoil such a perfect day?" said Frou-Frou, as she put some seashells between her toes to show Henri and make him laugh. She piled pebbles on his chest as he pretended not to notice, with his eyes shut. In the distance, they could see a tall man dressed in strange clothing walking down the beach towards them. He had rugs hanging over his arms and bags of all sizes and colours tied to his back. "Look, here comes a peddler," cried Mirabel. "He must be very hot, those heavy rugs. I hope he goes away. He makes me nervous." He passed them on his way to the beach cafe. "How about a swim?" cried Henri, and he raced Frou-Frou down to the water. Mirabelle stayed behind to look after their belongings and put things away. After their swim, Frou-Frou said, "As a special treat, I am going to buy us all a large special ice cream with chocolate and walnuts on the top." "How lovely!" cried Mirabelle, clapping her hands. "I won't be long," said Frou-Frou, and taking her beach bag, she strolled to the cafe at the end of the beach. Just then, Riri and Madame Panache arrived. Riri trotted up to them, wagging his tail. "Do you know that I've cycled all the way? The traffic was terrible, so I rode on the pavement like a child. Let me sit down a moment to recover my breath." Mirabelle poured out some cool citron for the old lady and lent her Frou-Frou's hat. "Where is our Frou-Frou?" cried Madame Panache. "She should be back soon with some ice cream," said Mirabelle. "She has been gone a long time. I shall go and look for her," said Henri. He walked towards the cafe. Mirabelle then saw the tall peddler coming down the beach in a great hurry. As he passed them, she noticed there was a beach shoe, like the one worn by Frou-Frou, hanging from his bag. Riri started to bark and dance round the man. He kept jumping up at his bag, which seemed to be very full and heavy. Very soon his barking had attracted all the other dogs on the beach, and they all began to jump and bark. The noise was terrific. There was a Great Dane called Nero, 2 Pekingese called Ming and Ting, 2 Dachshunds called Trixie and Heidi, and 4 mongrels whom nobody called and who chased the man, nipping at his heels when he started to run away. In order to run faster, he dropped his big bag and some of his rugs. "Call the police!" shouted Madame Panache, and ran to the bag, which she opened, and there she found poor Frou-Frou, tied hand and foot with cruel string. "What a wicked fellow!" she cried, untying the little frog and rubbing her wrists. Then she put her shoe back on and carried her to Mirabelle, who was crying and wringing her hands. Mirabelle was so grateful to all the brave dogs that she invited them with their owners to a party to be held on her terrace. She could prepare doggy dishes, and she would buy some juicy bones from her butcher. They all came, and Riri and Madame Panache and old Victor were also there. Henri hung a lantern on the terrace, and they sang songs to the guitar played by his sister Mirabelle. Later they heard the nightingales in the garden singing on the terraced hill. "They roll their R's just like good French birds," sighed Frou-Frou. The fireflies glowed under the vine, and at last it was time to go home. The dog owners thanked Mirabelle for a splendid party and left, while Victor took Madame Panache home. Henri then settled down to his work. Frou-Frou sang with great feeling, and Mirabelle kept the family of frogs happy with her excellent meals in their small sunny villa on the Côte d'Azur. Finis.